Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. James 1, verses 2 through 4.
So what happens when we give people this false hope, a false prophecy, a false teaching, put them further into bondage?
We had known this guy, started a graveyard ministry. Families live in these graveyards.
They're looked down on because they're living among the spirits.
But then the next statement, she goes, "Did you sing to those solo cups?" And I did sing to those solo cups on my way out your front door. I had 5 seconds. And she said, "So there is a plant about 3 inches tall in each solo cup."
"Sir, you died this morning at about 9 a.m. This is 5:30 p.m. You didn't just die, you died hours ago."
Tales of Glory presents Experiencing Jesus in Mystical Prayer with Reverend Michael Norton. Michael is a spiritual warfare and inner healing minister in the San Francisco Bay Area. His spiritual warfare experience with exorcism, deliverance, and spiritual afflictions has taken him to many countries. Michael also works in inner healing with severe trauma. His expertise spans 25 years of ministry. For the past 25 years, Michael has worked with training the religious, seminary, counselors, and lay people whom have benefited from his equipping. He is also the author of A Field Guide to Spiritual Warfare, A Field Guide to Advanced Spiritual Warfare, and the most recent Cosmology and Demonology in Genesis 1 through 11. In this Tales of Glory series of study workshops, Michael will focus on the writings of St. Teresa of Avila and her masterpiece on deep prayer life with Jesus, the Interior Castle. Tales of Glory presents Experiencing Jesus in Mystical Prayer. I am your host, Michael Norton. We now continue with part 2 of our discussion on St. Teresa of Avila's Interior Castle, 6 Mansions, Chapter 1. Welcome, Tales of Glory listeners. Hey, Tales of Glory family, I'd like to welcome you back, my 3 listeners and our 3 dogs now. Hey, we are diving back into part 2 of 6 Mansions, Chapter 1 from the classic manuscript on deep prayer by St. Teresa of Avila, the Interior Castle. And this is part of our series. This is 6 Mansions of Experiencing Jesus through Deeper Prayer. And this is part 2 of 6 Mansions, Chapter 1. Thank you for tuning in. Good to have y'all back. How you guys been doing? What we got, Mike? Okay, topics covered in Chapter 1. So far, we covered the 6 Mansions, prepares the soul in spiritual betrothal. And we have the state of the soul to those whom God grants these favors. And trials and infirmities. We covered the first 3 topic sections, was it last time in part 1 in episode 149 of Tales of Glory. Here in episode 150, we are going to wrap up the rest of the topics that St. Teresa presents to us. And these will be starting with section 4 from my outline of Trials from Confessors. If you're on YouTube or Rumble or Spotify, you're watching the videos, I have the outline up there. And we have section 4. We have section 5, The Soul Feels Forsaken. Section 6, Trials from Devils and Other Afflictions. And section 7 of my outline, Preparations for the 7th Mansions. That's what we're covering here today. Let's dive into section 4 of my outline, Trials from Confessors. She's going to talk about timorous confessor, anxiety on account of past sins, fears and aridity in prayer, scruples and fears raised by the devil, bewilderment of the soul, and God alone relieves these troubles. Let's dig into this. 6 Mansions, Chapter 1. And we are starting in header 15 from her book. And header 15 is labeled a timorous, or I have in brackets, a fearful confessor. A timorous confessor. He's fearful. What does that mean? St. Teresa's going to explain it to us. She writes, "Let us begin with the torture that it costs us to have to do with a confessor so scrupulous and inexperienced that he thinks nothing safe. He is afraid of everything and doubtful about everything. As soon as he sees that he is dealing with anything out of the ordinary, This is particularly so if he sees any imperfection in the soul that is undergoing these experiences. He thinks that people to whom God grants these favors must be angels, and as this is impossible, while they are in the body, he attributes the whole thing to melancholy or to the devil. The world is so full of melancholy that this certainly does not surprise me, for there is so much abroad just now, and the devil makes so much use of it to work harm that confessors have very good cause to be afraid of it and to watch for it very carefully. That is the job of the confessor, to watch for things very carefully and to hand out criticism when necessary. Sometimes they hand out too much. Commentary 15. Remember when St. Teresa says confessor, she is also referring to a person who is a spiritual director. St. Teresa informs us of a more profound internal suffering, which she refers to as being torturous to her, and that is of an unknowledgeable or fearful-minded, which she calls timorous confessor, when it comes to subject and experiences encountered in mystical prayer. What do we do with a confessor who is totally uncomfortable with the stuff we express to them or shared our innermost, deepest spiritual relationships? And the confessor's kind of like, that's off my radar. What do I do? You know, I've dealt with pastors like that too. It's off my radar, but it's not their fault. It's where they're at. It's where we're at. So this could be torturous. We're trying to explain something we can't express in words, articulate, and yet we have a person on the other side of the room that's like, what are you talking about? I never experienced that in prayer. So it's kind of torturous, she says, to the soul. It's like another trial here, right? So these spiritual directors are fearful and doubtful of any supernatural experience through prayer. They are even more skeptical if they know you and see you less than perfect in your spiritual walk. It's like, what's Mike doing have all these spiritual things? I've seen him outside. He stubbed his toe. He swore. You know, he's no angel. Why is he having spiritual experiences and I'm not? You know, something's wrong here and I see him as less than perfect. So either he's delusional or these experiences can only be coming from the devil. You have this happen. I've had people say that to your face, right? This is where we're at in the six mansions. It can be very fun. So this lack of knowledge or skepticism from these spiritual directors torments the soul because it has a certitude that these experiences are authentic graces from God. So now the soul's kind of like in torment here. What's going on? You know, I know this is real, but this director's kind of looking at me like you're cuckoo or delusional or having a conversation with the devil here. Not being a devil's advocate, no pun intended here, for the spiritual director, I can see from the perspective of the modern church how difficult this task can be challenging with the current state of the Western church. What do I mean by that? I've seen in my surroundings and people I've worked with and some, like I said, we've been teaching the charismatic churches, they're more open to do deliverance, but they go overboard. Everybody's having a mystical experience and nobody's being spiritually directed and nobody is questioning their own prophetic words or putting them in check or testing the spirit. So what we have is this mechanism that's out of control that sounds biblical, but is not biblical because there's no correction. There's no discernment. There's no critical discernment and prophetic words coming out. There's no discernment or spiritual direction on spiritual experiences. So everybody's having these daily angelic experiences, which they're not, because we know they're not. And it's just they're letting their mind run off in these fantasies that just simply aren't true. And that's the current state of the charismatic church right now. Everybody's having visitations because some influencer on YouTube who's making lots of money and has sold themselves out are having spiritual experiences and visitations by spirit. So therefore, anybody listening is going, hey, you know what? I'm having visitations too. And it's just spreading the muck. It's spreading the sewage tap. That's what's happening here. There's no spiritual direction and it's required. It is required. If we get bad spiritual direction or condemnation or something, the spiritual director, it's still good for the soul because we got correction and we learn how to deal with it. And sometimes God will allow that sort of correction to us. And we have to process with Jesus, like, I know I have the certitude that I experienced was real. So like I said, in the Western church, especially the charismatic church, we have completely abandoned discernment of spirits, 1 John 4:1, and critical discernment of prophetic words from 1 Thessalonians 2:13. We've done that. But let's move on. Let's go to 16 here. Under Teresa's heading 16, she has it titled Anxiety on Account of Past Sins. What does she have to say? She writes, but When the poor soul, harassed by the same fear, goes to the confessor as to a judge, and he condemns her, she cannot fail to be upset and tortured by what he says, and only a person who has passed through such a trial will know how great it is. For this is another great trial suffered by these souls, especially if they have been wicked, namely to think that because of their sins, God will permit them to be deceived. And although, when His Majesty grants them this favor, they feel secure and cannot believe that it comes from any other spirit than a spirit of God. Yet, as it is a state which passes quickly and the soul is ever mindful of its sins, and it sees its faults in itself, where these are never lacking, it then begins to suffer this torture. Commentary 16. So St. Teresa explains that this interior trial, which she also describes as internally torturous, is going to a spiritual director for sound advice on a mystical experience, and the spiritual director completely discredits the experience. Ouch. Causing the soul to question the authenticity of the grace from God it truly believed it has received during prayer. St. Teresa advises that some spiritual directors have no personal experience or wisdom to navigate and counsel on these deeper internal trials. That's true too. I've run this in churches too. Our pastors are called out to be shepherds, and I ran into this way back when I got all started this. I started mystical experiences, and I was upset that my pastor couldn't be a spiritual director or wasn't at a place where he could give me advice or wisdom, because he was a shepherd, and that was what God raised him up to be, not to be a spiritual director. So you have to find somebody that's good at this, or somebody who understands, who's been through this, these things ahead of you, and they're difficult people to find. They're hard to locate. I'm going to jump in here with a cautionary note and offer some of my own experience in spiritual direction with souls I have worked with. I mentioned previously that the current state of the Western Church is experiencing graces from God. This is true, but it's off the rails, man. It's off. Go to a charismatic church. Go look how crazy it is. Some souls are having some valid mystical experiences from Jesus, and in their fervor and excitement, their soul fabricates a lot more experiences. I have angels appearing at my house now. I'm talking to Michael the Archangel. I'm talking to Gabriel. I'm talking to, these different angelic beings. Why are they in your house? Why are they talking to you? This is the sort of stuff that's being perpetuated through, like people on the Elijah list. I have the angels at my house talking to me. They're perpetuating their own fantasies, and they're not going for the First Thessalonians, was it 2:13, critical discernment, a prophetic word? Although we're not talking about prophetic word here, I'm talking about what's happening in spiritual direction and why we're having a difficult time with people thinking and fabricating they're having mystical experiences, and it's not being corrected by any spiritual directors in their own church. It happens so often, these souls become so accustomed to these self-fabricated mystical occurrences, entirely scripted and produced by their souls. It's coming in here. They're making it up. They're writing movie scripts. We call them script writers. That they can't discern what is authentic from what is 90% fantasy from an overwrought imagination. Wow, Mike, that's harsh. 90% was made up. Yeah, if you're having encounters or visitations nightly and daily and all this stuff, I know this because I went through some dark battles all through my life. And on occasion, especially a night strike, when I was doing homeless ministry on the streets in the deepest, darkest places we are in San Francisco, and like in the Haight or in the Tenderloin, we had angelic manifestations, but it wasn't all the time. And, so I know these things happen. I've experienced them. And even St. Teresa, we're following a guide that was written back in the 1560s or something like that, the 16th century. And she's pretty steadfast. She's pretty dead on what she wrote. And that's why I'm using this as a roadmap for us, because she knew her stuff, and things really haven't changed in her encounters or visitations. I'm afraid to even use that word. Not fearful. It's because people think they're having visitations and they're not. They're being fabricated, and their mind's making stuff up. Is what it is. And we talked about this last time in part 1, the overwrought imagination, the flights of the fantasy here, right? Yeah, so let's jump back in. Let's go check in section 17 now. Heading 17, titled Anxiety on Account of Past Sins. When the confessor reassures a soul, it becomes calm, though in due course it gets troubled again. But when all he can do is to make it still more fearful, the thing grows almost intolerable. Especially when on top of everything else come periods of aridity, during which a soul feels as if it has never known God and never will know him, and as if to hear his majesty spoken of is like hearing of a person from a great distance away. Commentary 17. St. Teresa reflects on working with an inexperienced spiritual director while going through a bout of aridity, that's dryness in prayer, and Jesus seems to be distant away from us in our hearts. Like, I know you're there, Jesus, but I really can't feel you close to me right now. What is going on? She describes this interior prayer trial as intolerable to the soul as it experiences this. Remember going back to the second mansions and third mansions? Aridity in prayer is when we're pulling up our buckets from the well. Remember prayer, we're working hard, we're drawing up buckets, and they're coming up dry. That's aridity in prayer. It's like, and I've been there. It happens in and out a lot too. We're in the middle of intense spiritual battles, or in the middle of a trial, or something's going on, and usually connect easy with Jesus, and now you're feeling like, I know Jesus is there, but I'm having a hard time praying. I'm having a hard time connecting with Jesus. And that's when you experience this aridity in prayer. Your well ran dry. And we're humans. This happens. So let's see what we do about this. Let's go on to section 18. Heading 18. Scruples and fears raised by the devil. She writes, all this would be nothing to the person concerned were it not followed immediately by the thought that she cannot be describing her case properly to her confessor and has been deceiving him. And although when she thinks about it, she feels sure she has not kept back even the first movement of her mind, it is of no use, for her understanding is so dim that it is incapable of seeing the truth, but believes what the imagination, now the mistress of the understanding, presents to it in the nonsense that the devil attempts to present to it. When our Lord gives him leave to test her soul, and even to make her think herself cast off by God, where there are many things that assault her soul with an interior oppression so keenly felt and so intolerable that I do not know to what it can be compared, save to the torment of those who suffer in hell, where in a spiritual tempest no consolation is possible. Commentary 18. St. Teresa explains that now that the soul experiences aridity and Jesus feels distant, the soul's trial becomes even more intolerable because it can't articulate the mystical experience the spiritual director. Right? The soul doesn't know where it's at. Like, why can't you connect with Jesus? It should be so easy. And I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I know I'm in this deep trial. I keep telling Jesus to pull me out of it. What's going on? I can't articulate, but I know I'm in a trial. I can't articulate what's going on, and I'm having some of these crazy mystical experiences internally, which I can't even put words to myself, because every now and then Jesus may pop in with a grace to pull me up. And it's like, I don't even know how to put this to words, what's going on. Spiritual director's kind of scratching his head like, well, what do you want me to do then? So in this trial, the soul's understanding is incapable of accurately reasoning the truth of the experience. The imagination attempts to step in and can only produce nonsense of the experience as it tries to fill in the missing pieces. So the intellect's going, okay, I'm at a loss for words, and the imagination jumps in, I got this, I'll help you out. Like, no, please don't. But we allow the soul to fill in missing pieces, which is okay, because it's kind of like, we'll fill in the missing DNA with the African tree frog, right? Like Jurassic Park. And over time, as we mature and we have more experiences, we start pulling out the missing DNA parts. So if you have a trial and you have missing pieces and your imagination filled it in, that does happen. But maybe we're several years down the road, you go, oh my gosh, I know what this was. I can pull this out. That was inaccurate. The imagination made this up, and the intellect goes, I know what's going on here. Let's put this truth in place, if that makes sense. Usually over experience or deeper experiences, we figure out what we fabricated. It's a process, guys. It's a process. That's why we just can't run off going, I'm having visitations last night, and this angel came and told me about this, and they gave me a highlight on this. It's happening far too much right now. It's hurting people. That's why I'm against it. It's the people it's hurting in inner prayer. That's why I'm against this, because it's hurting the people who are working on inner healing. And when they come across these fabricated things from social media influencers, don't listen to social media influencers. Don't, if they're on Instagram or something and they have their little ministry behind them with their name on them and left, and their hands are well manicured and their hair is well done and stuff, and You're charging like $900 for a conference, come out to him with his deliverance or inner healing. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're wasting your money. Or she says, or even worse here, the devil may attempt to hijack this moment with something else nonsensical to present the spiritual director. So the demonic may whisper something here. Hey, this is what this was. You know, no, it's not. That's not. So God may even allow the soul to be sifted by the devil during this time due trials, where the soul believes Jesus has truly abandoned it. She says the interior oppression is unbearable with all the warfare going on. The soul feels like it is cast into hell with no consolations from Jesus to comfort it during this interior spiritual storm. Yeah, these are no fun. These are no fun. I've experienced a few of these too with spiritual warfare because, like I said, it's not how the social media influencer explains spiritual warfare. It's when God puts you through trials. I've gotten some deep, dark stuff to battle because of the trials Jesus put me through. And there were some times where it's like, how's this going to end, Jesus? I can't make it out of this. I need your help. I need you back. I need to feel you. And Jesus go, no, you totally got this one. And there were no consolations, but he just built up my soul to trust him deeper in this. That's what's going on, guys. Building deeper relationships. It seems weird. Like, why is God using suffering? Because things are inevitable, right? Death, taxes, and trials, because suffering is going to happen. Suffering is inevitable. So Jesus will use our worldly sufferings to step into our humanity and step in next to us and walk along with us to take us deeper in trust with him. Okay, let's go on to the next section. Heading 19, Bewilderment of the Soul. She writes, if she decides to take up the matter with her confessor, it would look as if the devils have come to his aid so that he may torture her soul the more. A certain confessor, dealing with a person who had been in this state for torment after it had passed away, thought that the oppression must have been of dangerous type, since it had involved her in so many trials. So he told her, whenever she was in this state, to report to him, but this had made her so much worse that he came to realize that he could no longer do anything with her. For although she was quite able to read, she found that if she took up a book written in the vernacular, she could understand no more of it than if she had not known her alphabet. Her understanding was not capable of taking it in. Commentary 19. St. Teresa is referring to her own experience with her confessor, Father Baltzar Alvarez, who was also a mystic. She documented this in her autobiography, Life, chapter 30, paragraph 15. And she writes, to converse with anyone is worse, for the devil then sends so offensive a spirit of bad temper that I think I could eat people up, nor can I help myself. I feel I do something when I keep myself under control. Or rather, our Lord does so, when he holds back with his hand anyone in this state from saying or doing something that may be hurtful to his neighbors and offensive to God. Whoa. Then, as to going to our confessor, that is of no use. For the certain result is, and very often as it has happened to me, what I shall now describe. Though my confessors, with whom I had to do then, and had to do still, are so holy, they spoke to me and reproved me with such harshness that they were astonished at afterwards when I told them of it. They said that they could not help themselves, for though they had resolved not to use such language, and though they pitied me also very much, yea, even had scruples on the subject because of my grievous trials of soul and body, and were moreover determined to counsel me, they could not refrain. They did not use unbecoming words, I mean words offensive to God, yet their words were the most offensive that they could be borne within confession. They must have aimed at mortifying me. So St. Teresa reflects on her understanding, which is incapable of even reading books when she is enduring this kind of trial. She documented this in her autobiography on life, chapter 30, paragraph 14, and she writes, God spoke of, it listens and believes that he is what he is, because the church so teaches. But it recollects nothing of its own former experience. Vocal prayer or solitude is only a greater affliction. Because the interior suffering, whence it comes, it knows not, is unendurable, and it seems to me in some measure a counterpart of hell. So it is, our Lord has showed me in a vision. For the soul itself is then burning in the fire, knowing not who has kindled it, nor whence it comes, nor how to escape it, nor how to put it out. If it seeks relief from the fire by spiritual reading, it cannot find any. just as if it could not read at all. On occasion, it occurred to me to read a life of a saint that I might forget myself and be refreshed with the recital of what he had suffered 4 or 5 times. I read as many lines, and though they were written in Spanish, I understood them less at the end than I did when I began. So I gave it up. It so happened to me on more occasions than one, but I have a more distinct recollection of this. So she didn't have time reading like books that would inspire her by other saints who were going through these things. It's like the soul just like it's just done. Like I can't do this. I can't dial in. I can't go to recollection. I can't still my mind from meditation. It's just this is a dryness period she's talking about. So it's interesting. So these are trials we're experiencing 6 mansions to prepare us, right? We'll go through this strange dryness, even though we're deeper and more mature in our prayer life and our prayer walk. These things will hit us, and God will use it to refine us deeper, right? He's going to use the fire to refine the silver, remove more impurities out of us. That's what's going on. Have you ever experienced this in a trial where your understanding is not working and you can't even read spiritual books, let alone pray? Yep, it's happened to me quite a bit. So if this happened to you and you kind of get what's going on here, leave your feedback in the comment section. Discuss what happened to you and what's going on. Let's have some community commentaries on this one here. All right, let's move to the next section. Heading 20, God alone relieves these troubles. Briefly in this tempest, there is no help for but to wait upon the mercy of God, who suddenly, at the most unlooked for hour, with a single word or on some chance occasion, lifts the whole of his burden from the soul, so that it seems as if it never been clouded over, but is full of sunshine and far happier than it was before. Then, like one who escaped from a perilous battle and gained the victory, the soul keeps praising our Lord, for it is he who has fought and enabled it to conquer. It knows very well that it did nothing itself to do the fighting. For what it saw that all the weapons with which it could defend itself were in the hands of its enemy, and was thus clearly aware of its misery and realized how little we can do for ourselves if the Lord should forsake us. Commentary 20. Teresa advises there is little or nothing we can do while we endure the spiritual interior trial. In this trial, the soul is entirely at the mercy of God until he brings consolation to calm or end the tormenting storm. Ain't that the truth? These are not fun. And like I've had one that's been lasting like 10 years. It's been difficult. And you can have intermixed trials going on. It's not like one trial's done, let's tap and go on next. I've had a long one. It's been very dark, and I'll talk about this later. It's just trying to figure out what's going on here. I kind of know what's going on. It's preparing me for darker battles to remove a lot more pride in me. But this thing's just been going like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done. You know, Jesus in 10 years is quite a long time. I've had some that last for months, intermixed inside of this, a couple of days, whatever. So it's very difficult. We endure these in the 6 mansions because we are in a deeper relationship with Jesus, and he knows we can survive these. It's how Jesus refines the soul for transforming union from glory to glory. Paul talks about transformation from glory to glory. Guess how we do this? Trials. Remember we read in the early beginning with our opener with James, right? We're going to go through trials. The soul will feel completely helpless in these trials, and no spiritual warfare will avail. God will bring the soul to a place where it understands its own wretchedness without him. This experience would be the taste of hell of our soul would experience if he had forsaken it. So as we prepare for spiritual betrothal and moving into the 7th mansions, which we're not there yet, as we say, yes, Jesus, I want to lock in with you. I want this to be, our transform union to come in where my soul and my heart, my spirit are completely in union with your prayer. But at the same time, God goes, if I also want you to understand too, what's it like to be without me? So he's helping us decide on both sides. Like, this is what it looks like now. You gone this far? This is what it looks like without me, guys. It's not fun to show, hey, this looks like you're forsaken, right? It feels like that. That's what it feels like in my 10-year trial going on. But it feels forsaken, but you're not forsaken, if that makes sense. There's still joy. There's still intermittent pieces where Jesus pulls me out like, okay, I need a breather. Like I held my breath long enough, I'm ready to come up for air. And then the joy comes from that. But the trial's still going on. It's like, oh, I'm not forsaken. And it feels forsaken, but your heart and spirit know you're not forsaken. If that makes sense. They're difficult. Trials are difficult. You're more mature. To those souls who experience this level of purification, it will be a previously gained wisdom and trust that victory will always come through Jesus. Amen. Victory and trust, right? The victory always comes to these guys, always comes. I'm going to throw a party when my 10-year one's done. Refining builds a deeper relationship with trust with Jesus. Faith comes easily, but trust comes through intolerable trials. One more time. Faith comes easy, but trust comes through intolerable trials. Yeah, I trust you, Jesus. You know, we always say that, but do we? Do we really trust him? A lot of people I work with inner healing, they always tell me they trust Jesus, but they don't know the depths they need to trust Jesus for a healing. What does it mean to pick up your mat and walk? Are you at that level to trust him? Some people aren't. Some people don't want to listen. Some people go, well, Mike, I've been doing this like close to 25 years now. Mike, you don't know what you're talking about. I think I need deliverance. I think you need to work on your behaviors, and the behaviors will deliver you if you do deal with the behaviors. No, here, I'll send you a book, Mike, here's some book from some author. He's a deliverance minister. He's been on Isaiah Salvador's podcast and stuff like, oh God, here we go. Yeah. So it's just, watch out. You don't know who credible people are. And if somebody's telling you the truth, hey, you need to work on yourself and your behaviors. That's a trial. So have you ever experienced these intense six mansions trials like St. Teresa is describing? Again, let's talk about this, guys. Leave your comments in the comment section on this. What did you experience? Have you experienced this? You know what Mike's talking about. Have you had trials been longer than a few days, a few months, how many years like I'm experiencing? And people say when I go into spiritual warfare, they don't know what the cost is. They don't know. And that's what's with these, again, I'm going to beat up on these guys, these social media influencers, they don't know what they're talking about. Sure, you can have visitations, but the cost of that. And if you actually are, and God brings these trials and stuff, then you're not having these visitations every night. You're not. You're in a place where you're not even the mystical experiences yet. You're allowing your mind to fabricate the mystical, and you can't tell the difference between the two. That's why I'm saying beware of these people. They're immature, and they haven't been corrected. And just because you have millions of followers, and they're sending you tons of money, you have $900 conferences, you send out PDF files how to break this curse and break that curse. These guys don't know what they're talking about. They don't. I'm trying to warn you guys, this St. Teresa's laying out the path, man. Follow the path that's been laid out for over 600 years here. Follow this one. Okay, we're entering to the next section of my outline. Section 5, the soul feels forsaken. The topics covered under here are 3 subject headers she has. Human weakness, earthly consolations are of no avail, prayer gives no comfort at such a time, and remedies for these interior trials. So let's dive into this header section. Starting with heading 21, human weakness. She writes, we have no need of reflection to enable us to understand this, for the soul's experience of enduring it and of having found itself completely powerless has made it realize that it is utterly helpless and that we are but miserable creatures. Here she goes, we're worms, we're wretched, right? That's St. Teresa. That's who we are in comparison to God. He had to come save us. We were wretched. Still are. Let's continue. For, though it cannot be devoid of grace, since despite all its torment, it does not offend God, and would not do so for anything upon earth, yet this grace is buried so deeply that the soul seems not to feel the smallest spark of any love for God, nor has it ever done so. If it has done anything good, or His Majesty has granted it any favor, the whole thing seems to like a dream or a fancy. All it knows for certain is that it has sinned. Commentary 21. St. Teresa continues with her explanation of the torment of the soul in the 6 mansions, where it feels Jesus has forsaken it. Here we go. In this stage of prayer, the soul recognizes it is wretchedness and doesn't need reflection to understand that it has only come this far through only Jesus' strength and love. Got that? So remember I believe in the 3rd and 4th mansions, we're practicing reflection, right? Where am I in God? My wretchedness, my soul, I'm a worm. We're doing that. But now the soul kind of understands it now, because during his trials, it was if we feel, Jesus didn't really pull away. We feel like he pulls away. He's still inside of us. He's indwelling. We feel like he's pulled away and he's distant. And we feel our own wretchedness when he pulls away like this. We feel our own wretchedness. She describes the soul as feeling incapable or functioning and being on autopilot. There's a dead space in the soul where it seems it can't feel the spark of love of the indwelling Jesus. The soul begins to question whether the sparks it felt were even real or if they were a form of imagination. However, the soul is left in a state where it is well aware of the sins it has committed. These are the trials that have resurfaced that need to be dealt with, unfinished business of the soul with Jesus before full union can take place in prayer. So we have these experiences where, gosh, when I'm having these graces of God, I had these consolations, like they're so powerful in prayer. And it's like I felt joy. I'm not talking about you sitting through worship, listening to your worship music. I'm talking about you're deeper in prayer. And you had these experiences, either you heard locutions coming in or you had some sort of powerful graces that go, oh my gosh, Jesus is there. And now during these trials, they cease and you feel like Jesus moved away. Maybe this is the fourth or fifth mansions, right? Jesus is wooing you, pulling us along. We're going deeper in prayer with him. And now all of a sudden we're ready to jump in, give it our all. We want to totally be in full union with Jesus. And Jesus goes, okay, now let's test this. What if you weren't getting these graces now? Do you still love me? Do you still want me? And why are these old trials coming up? I thought I was done with pride. I thought I was done with these, being angry at people and people that did me wrong. I thought I was done. I thought I forgave them and all this stuff. Now this stuff starts to resurface. Like, why is this coming up now? Because the final trials, the final refinement, so to speak, they get this stuff up and out of you as we heal. And it's what we need to do to become in full union with Jesus, right? He wants the house cleaned. He's cleaning our house. We may not be acting like very good Christians right now when this happens. I thought you were a Christian. Why is you acting like this? Because that's what's going on. Jesus is refining us. So have you experienced these trials? You thought you were over. I thought I was done with this trial. I thought, I forgave this person. Why am I angry towards this person? Or why am I experiencing pride again? And we thought they were done with in the third mansions, or the fourth mansions, or the fifth mansions. And here they come again. They resurfaced. And they're more deeper and they're more emotional. Have you experienced this? Crazy stuff. How about trials so intense your soul merely functioned? So you're an autopilot, just enough to get through the day. This is almost similar to like a dissociation fog, but it's like a spiritual fog of the mind. It's a spiritual fog where it's like the brain is just like, the intellect, the understanding is like, I don't know what to do. Tried everything. I'm just going to go along for the ride here. You're like, what do we do? It's on autopilot, spiritual autopilot. Or how about trials so long and intense that you thought Jesus had forsaken you? Have you experienced these? I have. So again, if you experience these, you want to comment about these or talk about them or what's your own experience, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section on this, whether on YouTube or Rumble or Spotify. Leave us a comment. Let's move along. Heading 22. Earthly consolations are of no avail. She writes, "O Jesus, how sad is it to see a soul thus forsaken, and how little, as I have said, can it gain from any earthly consolation. So do not suppose, sisters, if you ever find yourselves in this condition, that people who are wealthy or free to do as they like have any better remedy for such times. No, no. To offer them earthly consolations would be like telling criminals condemned to death about all the joys that there are in the world. Not only would this fail to comfort them, it would but increase their torment. Comfort must come to them from above, for earthly things are of no value to them anymore. This great God desires us to know that He is a king and we are miserable creatures, a point of great importance for what follows." Commentary 22. So St. Teresa petitions Jesus in her prayer for the soul that endures such an intolerable trial and feels as if it's been forsaken in the mansions. So that's her opening prayer right now, like, oh, daughters, here we go. Protect my daughters, what's going to happen? So what she says, there's no worldly consolation can bring any help to such a soul. Not even wealthy can find any earthly consolation for the soul. Their wealth can produce nothing to aid the soul in this trial. So even Elon Musk shells out some money to help you, or maybe some very wealthy Christian person like, hey, I'm going to send you on vacation or something like this, or surround you, or maybe provide food for you or something. I don't know, anything that comes from money or wealth or anything of the earth, any mindfulness. Let's talk about mindfulness too. Maybe the best mindfulness coach tries to help you. They're of no avail. They can't help you because Jesus has you in this trial, and Jesus is going to bring you in. He's going to bring you out. So their wealth can produce nothing to aid your soul. So He's going to steer you the way He needs to steer you to get you to the seventh mansions. So earthly consolation won't aid the soul in this trial. None of it. Nothing will help. It will only deepen the internal torment. Ouch. St. Teresa's 6 mansions purification of the soul with intolerable trials corresponds to St. John of the Cross's dark night of the soul. You heard of this one. This is the most misconstrued, most misused term in the modern Western church. I'm in my dark night of the soul. What exists the dark night of the soul? Just because you're having a bad day and a bad week, or your pastor chewed you out? I'm in my dark night of the soul. Here it goes. So what is dark night of the soul? Does any stuff sound familiar now? St. Teresa knew St. John of the Cross, who was a spiritual director for her. These guys were friends. They knew each other and they conversed. The 6 mansions and the dark night of the soul are where the soul undergoes deeper purification or sanctification through temptations and must rely on decisions based on its relationship with Jesus Christ. What would Jesus do? That's where we're at now. What would Jesus do and how do we navigate this? He's trying to make us be imaged more like him, remember? And was it Genesis 1:28, where let us image them in our image, or make man in our image. And now we're imaging ourselves to be more like Christ-like as we go through this purification. We won't get there. It won't be perfect, but as perfect as we can get ourselves through Jesus, it's how we're going to live this life. And I don't think we'll ever finish when we cross the finish line. There'll be so many impurities, but we'll be looking a lot better under the jeweler's microscope with less impurities. You want to look at it that way. This purification, sanctification comes in the form of interior and exterior trials. This stage in prayer is necessary for the transforming union of prayer with Jesus for us to move along into the 7th mansions. So what do you think about the dark night of the soul? Do you believe this term to be grossly misinterpreted in church these days? Like, I'm in a dark night. I heard it so much times. I'm having a bad day, or, I'm living, outside my house now. Wife threw me out. I'm in the dark night of the soul. Well, maybe you are. Maybe Jesus calls to clean you up. Who knows? But sometimes I believe it's been misconstrued for having a bad day or having a bad religious experience. These people aren't even at the level of being in 6 mansions yet. So look for that too. So does a bad month account for a dark night of the soul, or a bad week or angry tempered week? Is that dark night of the soul? Probably not. Unless you know you're in the 6 mansions and something's going on here Jesus is constructing. So again, if you've experienced dark night of the soul and you feel, it's in the 6 mansions here, this is what St. Teresa is describing in chapter 1, pretty much dark night of the soul, these trials. Dark night of the soul are trials. Feel free to leave a comment on this. What have you experienced? What do your trials look like in dark night of the soul or the 6 mansions trials? What have you experienced here? Heading 23, prayer gives no comfort at such a time. Now, what would a poor creature like that do if such things go on for a very long time? If she prays, she might as well not be doing so at all. I mean, for all the comfort it will bring her, for interiorly she is incapable of receiving any comfort, nor, even with her prayer is vocal, can she understand what she is saying. While mental prayer at such a time is certainly impossible, her faculties are not capable of it. Solitude is still worse for her. There was also torture for her to be in anyone's company or to be spoken to, and so, despite all her efforts to conceal the fact, she becomes outwardly upset and despondent to a very noticeable extent. Commentary 23. St. Teresa comments that a soul doesn't know what to do when left in these prolonged trials. Ain't that the truth? I've had long walks talking to Jesus. What's going on? My soul doesn't know what to do. My intellect doesn't know what to do. Understand. The soul could be in a tempest of turmoil with mental prayer. The intellect is wondering if anything is really happening or of use coming from mental prayer. It's like, hey, I've been doing mental prayer. I'm hearing nothing from you, Jesus. But I know you're there, Jesus, so I'm going to keep talking to you or keep rattling off to you. The faculties will shut down, believing there is no help coming from spending time alone with Jesus. I felt this too. I'm more perseverant. I still go back out to Jesus and talk with him. Even though I feel like nothing's there because I know he's there. This is a 6 mansion soul here, right? I know Jesus is there. I know he's listening. So maybe I'll just have a conversation. Sometimes I tone it down like, okay, Jesus, what do you want to talk about? Right? Oh my gosh. So we outwardly appear angry and ill-tempered due to our frustration over the lack of breakthrough. Yes, we do. And then we start learning what to do with our ill temper if we're going to be stuck in this. Like, okay, this isn't working for me. This isn't me. So Jesus, how do I deal with the ill-temperedness? Especially with the people around me. During these intense trials, the soul can feel the presence of Jesus. The intellect reminds the faculties of the authenticity and love of Jesus. The soul knows, like, if I'm gone this far, I know you're there, dear. I know, Jesus, I know you're real. But outside of those interior experiences, the soul feels completely disconnected from Jesus. And that's where the ouch is. Yep. Prayer seems useless. We can feel his presence, but we hear very little from him or receive any graces. Throughout my experience with these 6 mansions' intense trials, I've been able to operate in prophetic evangelism, particularly when the ministry is conducted in outreach or with an individual. So I could be in total radio silence with Jesus because it's just, he's sitting with me. I'm not getting much back from him, but he may send me on an outreach. And so he's kind of like, okay, Jesus, are you going to talk to me at the outreach? Are you going to feel it? He does. Especially if I do prophetic evangelism outreaches and I go to some dark places. He goes on full throttle and I hear him, we're talking. And then when the outreach is over, and I could be on an outreach for a week. And when the outreach is over that day, he shuts down. So I know he's there. Like, okay, we're back to trial state. Here we go. Now, completed ministry in these situations, the interior goes back to being completely quiet again. And it becomes a way of life as you navigate through this thing. What's going on? In church settings, we have the charismatic church lingo checklist. If a charismatic minister shouts out that a breakthrough is coming to an entire church, is this a claim valid? If you're in a trial and the charismatic minister points to you and goes, a breakthrough is coming, and Jesus is quiet, put a check on this. This is where you have to be critical and check on prophetic words coming to us or words outside of Jesus he's not given us. Yes, your breakthrough is coming, and it's like a no-brainer, right? We trust Jesus. A trial is going to come to an end. But when somebody points us, and they just rattle off all these charismatic buzzwords. Be careful that. Be careful. That's the problem for our church right now. So is their claim valid? I'm saying it's not. What if you're in a dark night of the soul? Only Jesus can bring an end to this, not a charismatic speaker with a list of buzzwords. The situation is where we need to test the spirit, 1 John 4:1, which I opened this part 2 with. So what have been your experiences in these trials? What has happened when you've been completely feel silent or somewhat felt forsaken, or Jesus is just quiet? He's not angry at you. He's just quiet. He's spending time with me. It's kind of like, I call it feeding the ducks. I have a lake house and we're sitting on our lake here. I'm rebuilding this house from the top up. It's a shack. But I'll go out and sit on the dock and quiet, and Jesus just sits there, and I can sense his presence of him sitting next to me. And it's an intimate time, even though no words are being said, and I haven't heard from him in a while. So these things happen. So what's your experience? How do you handle this? You go for long walks, Have the charismatic speakers, you got a breakthrough, been effective? You're going, oh, wait a minute, you're right, Mike. It didn't happen, did it? No, it didn't. Because this guy doesn't know Jesus' timing. Jesus will tell you when it's over. He won't tell some charismatic person who just wants to tell you everything you think you want to hear because he has the charismatic words that work. I call this manipulation. It is what it is. And so many churches invite these charismatic speakers to fire you up. It's manipulation. Go for the real deal. Don't sit through that crap. Heading 24. Remedies for these interior trials. She writes, is it credible that she'll be able to say what is the matter with her? The thing is inexpressible. Whether it's distress and oppression or spiritual troubles and cannot be given a name. The best medicine? I do not say for removing the trouble, for I know of one for that, but for enabling the soul to endure it is to occupy oneself with external affairs and works of charity and hope in God's mercy, which never fails those who hope in him. May he also be blessed forever. Amen. Commentary 24. These interior sufferings can be so intense that the intellect can find no words to describe the experience accurately. These trials are comprised of both spiritual afflictions and sufferings. St. Teresa advises the best thing for a soul in this state is to focus on charitable works and acts of mercy. She says these are not remedies. They help with the faculties as a soul is in a spiritual fog. Remember, I talked about this, not a DID fog. You don't know DID, dissociative identity disorder. Sometimes when people trigger out into another identity, there'll be a spiritual fog all day. Or if you had a really bad day, we all dissociate. You got in a fight with your spouse, you went to work, you kind of triggered out into something else. You're in this fog. You have a hard time getting to work. So the understanding's all like spinning. Like, what do I do? That is a understanding fog or a soul fog. I'm talking about a spiritual fog where the understanding is just like lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And struggling both internally and externally. And most of all, we maintain our focus and hope through him. This is how we build deeper trust with him. That's my inflection. This is all about hope, right? I'll talk about desolation after this. This is not desolation. There's no hopelessness here. There's always a sense of hope because you feel the presence of Jesus, even though you feel like he's pulled away from you. There's hope that this is going to end, and there's hope that there's going to be stuff coming out of this trial. It's hope. And by hoping and placing your trust in Jesus that there will be victory at the end is how he builds better, deeper trust with you through these trials. We're moving into a new outline section of mine, which is section 6. And we're going to cover trials from devils and other afflictions. Let's move on to heading 25. Heading 25, trials caused by the devil. Other trials caused by devils, which are of exterior kind, will not occur so commonly, and thus there is no reason to speak of them, nor are they anything so grievous. But whatever these devils do, they cannot, in my opinion, go so far as to inhabit the working of the faculties or disturb the soul in the way already described. After all, it thinks, and rightly, they cannot do more than the Lord permits, and so as long as it's not lost, nothing matters by comparison with what has been described above. Commentary 25. Jesus will permit spiritual affliction and demonic oppression during his trials. What, Mike? He will allow the soul these attacks to help purify the soul or lift it to where the devils can no longer be effective in their attacks against the soul. If Jesus permits these attacks and siftings, he has the devils on a tight leash. Jesus is in control, the devils aren't. And they can only do the soul what is allowed. So the intensity is only the intensity Jesus allows. They can't go any further. But if your soul is on the receiving end of these afflictions, it is more enough of an interior disturbance. As St. Teresa states, one should not lose one's mind during these attacks. Oh my God, I need a deliverance minister. Oh my God, it's happening to me. Call a deliverance minister. I hear demonic voices. Jesus going to let you get some degree of attack because you're more mature now, and you should be a soul in the state where you can step in and battle the demonic. You should be there, and it should not bother you because, unclean spirits, we are given authority over them. So this stage of prayer is a key spiritual direction point we must learn. Is a soul in a trial with spiritual afflictions permitted or deliverance required? I'll say it one more time. If you're working with a person, all this stuff's happening to me, I don't know why, and I feel like these demons are attacking me, and like they're a spiritual person, how do you know you're not in a trial? How do you know Jesus didn't put you in a trial to battle these things yourselves? Oh, you don't understand, Mike. You need deliverance. Well, here's a book from a friend that wrote this. Here, you read this book. You don't know about deliverance. Oh, Mike's in the mood, right? I keep getting that. It's like, forget 25 years experience of dealing with exorcisms, going deep occult, ritual abuse survivors, all this stuff. If Mike tells them something they don't want to hear, which is what we're supposed to do, oh, they just let you have it. Suddenly they're the expert. Oh, goodness gracious. So what do you think? Spiritual affliction, trial, or is deliverance required? Let me know in your comments. Let me know your thoughts, man. Tell me your thoughts. Heading 26, Other Afflictions. She writes, we shall next deal with other interior troubles that occur in these mansions, treating of the different kinds of prayer and favors of the Lord, for although a few are still harder to bear than those referred to, as will be seen by the effects they leave upon the body. They do not permit the name of trial, nor is it right that we should give them that name, since they are such great favors of the Lord, and the soul understands them to be so, and far beyond its deserving. Commentary 26. St. Teresa begins to note a different kind of experience, one that is not a trial. She calls them an affliction on the body. These afflictions, which she defines loosely, are beyond her articulation, except as mystical graces from God. These experiences are instrumental sufferings that will help with the purification of the soul and preparation for the seventh mansions. Such afflictions will include wounds of love, which she'll explain to us in the 6 Mansions, Chapter 2. We're getting there. Heading 27, Preparatory to entering the 7th Mansions. She writes, type than those already mentioned and a much higher one. And if in dealing with those of a lower kind, I have not been able to explain myself in greater detail, still less shall I be able to explain these others. The Lord give me help in everything I do, through the merits of his Son. Amen. Commentary 27. The affliction St. Teresa spoke to us about in the previous section, she advises, occur invariably as the soul begins to enter the seventh mansions of spiritual marriage. That's where we're entering it. We're in the sixth mansions. As this does come with many sufferings, some will be higher level than those introduced here in chapter 1 of the six mansions. I loosely described the wounds of love in part 1, chapter 1, as being similar to love sickness. It kind of sort of is. We'll discuss it more in chapter 2. Six mansions. So why do you think a wound of love is necessary to enter the seventh mansions? What are your thoughts? We haven't got there yet, but go ahead and throw your thoughts out there as we enter into this. All right, we're in conclusion here. So we covered, 7 different topics in an outline here that I broke apart what she was describing. It all flowed through, but I wanted to divide it into 7 subtopics so you guys could learn it easier and see what she's talking about. The first one, when she opened with in chapter 1 and part 1, 6 mansions prepares the soul in spiritual betrothal for the 7th mansion. Right? We discussed how we want to be in spiritual betrothal and spiritual marriage with Jesus, and Jesus going, whoa, I want it too, but there's still some impurities in your soul we got to deal with right now in order to draw you in to be able to comfortably be in that place of the 7th mansions. So of course we're going through some harsh trials right now. And she also discussed this with looked at the state of the soul in the 6 mansions. Remember, humility, humility, humility. And she's talked about the soul doesn't want accolades and how it was a trial to go, oh, she's a very holy person. Or the reverse accolade, oh, look how holy she thinks she is, right? So it's 2 forms of those trials. She was getting recognition she didn't want. We had trials from infirmities, which she called exterior trials, where we may have an ailment in the body, and it could be severe and prolonged, and it could be mortal, or we could get healed from it. We don't know which. Or he permits the enemy to make our bodies sick, because sickness comes from death and disease. And Jesus brings us in deeper during infirmities, into a place so deep we can't fathom. Like I said, I know many cancer patients and other people have mortal stuff. Some who survived the cancer, some who didn't. But their relationship with Jesus actually went so deep with him during these times. And I know to somebody that's outside, doesn't believe in Jesus, can't understand, what are you talking about, Mike? And why would Jesus allow this? Jesus didn't allow it. We are in a world that is failing. It's falling apart. It's in sin. It's in cosmic sin. It's decaying. So Jesus comes alongside and helps us where he can. And we had trials from confessors, right? Some confessors who may even be, like we said, Father Alvarez, who was a mystic, but St. Teresa was so far along ahead of him, his head was spinning like, I don't know what to do with this case. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not there in my mystical experiences. What is this stuff she's talking about? And it's because as a spiritual director, you need to be the biggest skeptic of what's going on in order to help the person. Many times you will find stuff they're not experiencing. It was fabricated from the fantasy, right? It was a fantasy. Then we have this other one too, with the soul feeling forsaken. Did God leave me? It's not really that. God's present, and at times you can feel the presence of God coming in, but it feels like sometimes it's forsaken because we haven't heard from God in a while, but he's still there during prayer. We know he's there, and we feel him, and we know it's a trial too, so we know what's going on. It usually just, we have to pull ourselves along and persevere through these arities and stuff that's happening in prayer during this time. It's not fun. And they could be intolerable. I know. They're intolerable. And demonic oppression and other afflictions. So Jesus will permit during trials, and I've experienced this too, for him to take me into darker areas of dealing with the occult, where he permitted the demonic to do stuff and demonic oppression. So in the trial, I became stronger against what was going on. Right? It was like fight camp. And these aren't fun. Mike, I want fight camp too. No, you don't. You are brought down to the ground. I call it the funk, where you walk around that fog. Like, I don't know what's going on. It's a spiritual fog. The understanding just derailed, and you have nothing to rely on but Jesus. I shared with you guys some time back too, where Jesus, back when I came into deliverance around 2005. This is probably around 2007 this happened. That Jesus shut down my way of seeing spirits because some of it was entangled with probably not some good stuff, dealing with hauntings and paranormal stuff. I wasn't involved in paranormal. My mom and I just thought we were psychics, right? I didn't think I was psychic. She did. But she knew I had the gift of discernment too because I could see the spirit she was seeing. So I think through that, there were some things that were wrong and Jesus shut me down for a little bit. And over a period of a year, Jesus rebooted me in deliverance ministry, but I was still doing deliverance. And Jesus just goes, just use the Holy Spirit to cast out demons. All you need to do. Rely on the Holy Spirit. Sometimes I'd pray in tongues. I didn't see nothing. People go, oh, Mike, what are you seeing on me? And I said, I'm not seeing nothing right now. Do I have demons? I don't know. I thought you could see them. Like, yeah, not right now. I'm not. Jesus shut it down. So I'm flying blind and I'm relying completely and trusting Jesus to cast out the demonic. Sometimes he's have me lay hands on him and quietly pray in the Spirit and it would cast demons out. There's that too. And the last one is afflictions, right? We have some afflictions. Like she talks about the wound of love. We can go into a trial and then have a deeply impacting vision or experience with Jesus that pulls in so deep and so powerful that we don't want this to let go of that vision or whatever happens, that mystical experience happens or locution. It's so deep, but it does. It's instantaneous. And then all of a sudden we're left lovesick by wanting to go back in to be with Jesus to feel that power and that spark. So you go from feeling no spark to this deep spark where you have a love wound, right? Like love sickness from what happened and occurred. Conclusion. We have wrapped up Six Mansions, Chapter 1. So the purpose of the Six Mansions is for a deeper transforming union of the soul from glory to glory. The soul needs to be more like an image of Jesus to some degree, but not perfect. We can't be perfect, only Jesus was. But the seventh mansions, so we can have full union in prayer. Trials are necessary to use the world around us and the unseen world to shape our souls and prepare us. Trials are not fun. And sometimes they're intolerable. She tells us that. I'm telling you that. Sometimes they're intolerable. Get me out of this, Jesus. You know, like a Navy SEAL. How do I ring the bell and get me out of the training? Suffering is a means that Jesus uses to step into our humanity and build a relationship in our hearts. During these trials, Jesus brings supernatural joy into a situation that could most likely shatter us mentally without his presence in our lives. You got that? One more time. Jesus brings supernatural joy into a situation that could most likely shatter us mentally without his presence in our lives. He brings his humanity into our suffering. During his harsh ups and downs, we also experience supernatural graces from Jesus as he helps us along. We know he's real. Keep in mind, during trials, there is always the hope of Jesus who dwells in us. A trial is not spiritual desolation. Trials remove worldly thoughts and impurities from our souls. In spiritual desolation, there is complete demonic hopelessness. What do I mean by that? In trials, we have hope. In spiritual desolation, this came about as a spiritual attack. Like if you're involved in true exorcisms, and I know most spiritual people on Instagram right now who are influencers have not ever done an exorcism. They may have done deliverances, they may have done demons. Casting out demons and doing exorcisms are two completely things. An exorcism falls under Mark 9:29, which is petitioning prayer. And if you go in this sort of stuff, in these battles, these are long-term and drawn out, the demons who attack you will throw you into desolation where you feel it's hopeless and you can't win. So only the strongest people can go into these battles. And they'll try to talk you out of your faith. Like I said, I mentioned time and time before. Remember, I had a friend that was talked out during one of these battles. Talked her out of her faith. That was desolation. And that's completely demonic, and there's hopelessness. Where trials, there's hope. But even through desolation, there's still hope if you have a strong enough relationship with Jesus Christ where you don't listen to the hopelessness. It's just irritating and mentally disruptive. Only those with a solid and deep relationship with Jesus can endure these trials. Trials bring hope and transformation, where desolation brings destruction. Get that? It is usually encountered in dark spiritual battles such as exorcisms, as I mentioned. And that's a wrap. Big thank you for those in the Tales of Glory family who made financial contributions. Again, thank you. Some exciting news on some of you guys that did contributions. I like to help other ministries who work with me too. And this month, Tales of Glory partnered with our friends Don and Maria Whitney. Remember, Don and Maria were a Whitney outreach from Tales of Glory episode 119. Go back and watch that. Because I'll fill you in where we sent the money. Because I don't really want to talk about or give away what we did, but those of you who follow along know what I'm talking about. Tales of Glory family sent some of our contributions, Don and Maria, and are working on funds for building a church in a land that is experiencing Christian persecution. In a land experiencing Christian persecution, that's number one. So if you guys know our story and what we've been doing, if you remember how we helped bring brick kiln slaves, some of you guys helped with that too. We freed some brick kiln slaves, got them out of the brick kilns, and now we're working on a church for them. What Don has told me is they've been pulled in church, now they've been freed. They're accepting Jesus, but some of the other radical people in that area who don't like Christians have been throwing rocks and bricks at them while they've been having outside service. So we're trying to get a building that protects them and they can be inside and not have to worry about rocks flying in at them while having church service. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. We're doing a little church building. We sent a few funds there. If you want to still participate in this, let me know. I can still send to them. But it's been a cool partnering. I love Don and Maria to death. I've been with them to Guyana. I've been with them to Vietnam and Cambodia. And both Don and I have virtually ministered. We haven't been there because we can't get to that land, so to speak, through Zoom calls and Zoom ministering. Don's done his own people. These pastors, I've done some of them people I work with. Yeah, cool stuff, guys. Tales of Glory is killing it, right? We're small, we're mighty. We're 110 volts out of the power here to run our computers. But we're reaching stuff. We're reaching. We don't need a mega church to reach, man. We don't. We just do it our own. Raise you guys up, disciple you. You guys get out there and start doing stuff, right? That's what I want you guys to do. That's the purpose. Raise you guys up. Some of you already raised up. Well, remember to always check the blog hosting page for episode 150. Show notes are going to be posted there. Always check the show notes. Always cool stuff there. Follow up with. You can find the show notes of all Tales of Glory episodes on our blog site. A Field Guide to Spiritual Warfare, one word. A Field Guide to Spiritual Warfare.blogspot.com. And also, like I said, if we want to continue helping us, we need help keeping the lights on. And at times we'd like to help other Christians in areas that need financial help. Or also, too, it's been helping to do counseling for some people I work with who came out of trafficking and can't afford it or had stuff done with ritual abuse. It helps here, too. And just, I say, help keeps the lights on for the counseling side, too. So go to A Field Guide to Spiritual Warfare.blogspot.com. We have a PayPal button. And just submit your blessing to us. Or you can go to PayPal, hit the PayPal button, and send it to m16ministries@gmail.com. And that would help too on that site. Well, love you guys. I think that kind of wraps us up. This is the M16 Bishop, the M16 headquarters. This is Reverend Mike checking out. Amen.